Ashidale. Thank you so much, Your Holiness. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
These are my friends.
Oh, okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, 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 hello. These children, generation of truly 21st century. We belong to 20th century.
Yes.
Generation of 20th century. So hopeful for us today, reason I feel 21st century, the church beginning. So if we make some effort, and then mainly through education, then the generation, the 21st century, within I think the next one generation, perhaps I think one generation, that means 30, 50 years, then we can see the better world, more peaceful, more compassionate. All hope on you. Please sit down. Now here, about 80 people. And not only this group, but the entire 7 billion human beings. I think each have a different face. So, even twin, there are some slight differences. But basically, entire 7 billion human beings are same human being. Mentally, emotionally, physically, we are same. So here, this moment, I, Tibetan, born in very cold, high altitude, and some remote area. But we are same. In spite, some people call me living Buddha, as you mentioned, but the way I born, same way. And worst thing, I think, in our village, we have the tradition, birth should not take in our room. So in Kasa, cowshed. So this living Buddha born in cowshed. So we are same. The differences, since my childhood, I trained or I learned about our inner world, about our mind and emotion, how to tackle emotion. Since childhood, I learned these things. At the beginning, I have no interest. I am very, very lazy student to learn these things. So my tutor, one occasion, he had to kept one whip to threaten me. Unless you study well, he may use that whip. So I often used to telling people, at that time, this is my elder brother also used to study with me. So 2 whips. One whip, yellow. one whip ordinary. So I often is telling people, the yellow whip, suppose a student, holy student, Dalai Lama. So the whip also yellow color, something holy. But I know if the yellow whip use, I know no differences of holy pain. So then gradually, of course, the situation also, you see, become more difficult. And my whole life, I think, carry a difficult life. But then, during those years, the thing which I learned, immense benefit to keep peace of mind, no matter how difficult it is. So I convince the problem as a Buddhist concept is a samsara. The very nature of samsara is problem. So, but then, in spite you remain in samsara, but through mentally, you can keep peaceful mind. And then, the practice of bodhicitta, practice of altruism, infinite altruism. Even to the troublemaker, it seems your dear friend. Actually, entire sentient being are usually we call mother sentient being. Each morning, I practice the kasoda regenerate survey. Semji, in that
His Holiness is talking about cultivating altruism on a daily basis.
Oh, so see, so as a result, it's an entire sentient being. In my mind, no evil force. All are sentient beings. So since a few years, when I carry some sort of puja, abhisheka, some kasada.
Empowerment, tantric empowerment.
Oh. So there is sort of tradition. At the beginning, expel evil force. Now, since last few years, I didn't practice that. No evil force. These also sentient beings, like me, they also want joyful life, happiness, do not want suffering. So these are same human being. As the Buddha say, we all have the Buddha nature. So we cannot make distinction, evil force. So now I never practice that part. As a result of my practice, bodhicitta. So that entire sort of sentient being, very dear in my mind, and appears very sort of dear brothers, sisters, or kasoda, like that. So in our
prayer, there are these lines which say, inviting all sentient beings, having generated this altruism, which is thinking of becoming a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, I call upon all sentient beings as my guests to this feast of enlightenment.
So, I notice now, you see, training our mind since my childhood, now really very, very useful to keep peace of mind. As a result, you see, my health also, in spite now 84-year-old, the physical, still okay. So then wherever I go, I always look any sentient being, any human being, just like my brother, sister, no stranger. So the result, your own mind becomes something very positive. If you too much emphasis, me, then when we met, some people suspect, distrust, fear. If you consider all sentient beings are our mother sentient being and the dearest and our guest, so then whenever we met someone, you see, we feel very close. Because as Shantan Deva say, Jigden Dungen Chinyiva Tigun Rantan Dolechung. Jigden Deva Chinyiva Tigun Shantan Dolechungs.
So Shantideva, in his Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, says, whatever suffering there is in the world all come through wishing others to have suffering. And whatever happiness there is in the world all come from wishing others to be happy.
Dr. Shenji Tungeda Yangda Chawar Machana, Sanjay Yitu Mindruchin, Kowana Dewan Mesa, Shivisavrisha.
And then after that, he goes on to say, if you are not able to switch your own happiness and joy with the suffering of others, leave alone reaching Buddhahood. Even in this cycle of existence, this unenlightened existence, you will not have happiness.
So whether believer or non-believer, we need warm-heartedness, more sort of the compassionate feeling, mind, for your own interest. More compassionate person, himself or herself, as I mentioned earlier, mentally more peaceful. And the one important is when your mind more peaceful, then when you heard some negative information come here, then you feel, okay, that's human nature. We will not develop irritation or some negative criticism or something. If too much emphasis, I, then the reaction is anger, like that. So not thinking that way, but respect all sentient beings. So therefore, in order to develop peace of mind, very important, the proper way to tackle our emotion. So these days, I expressing the hygiene of physical in our school, even in kindergarten. In your study, you also have some sort of knowledge how to take care of your body, isn't it? Yes. Hygiene of physical. So now we should develop beside hygiene of physical, hygiene of emotion must be there. Hygiene of emotion, you see, since childhood, kindergarten level, you see, healthy body, but too much disturb here, we will not be happy. Healthy physical, important. At the same time, healthy mind, very important. Irrespective, now this is part of education, not religion. And based on a scientific finding. Now scientists, they say basic human nature is more compassionate. It is quite sort of logical. You see, we're born, as I mentioned earlier, this from mother, and we survived with mother's affection and take care and mother's milk. Without that, I think after birth, without mother's care or someone else's care, then within few days we'll die. And then, more important, the other day I also mentioned, basic human nature is more compassionate. Another reason, the way we born at young age, the mother and some other sort of affection, taking care, very essential. Then those individuals who received maximum affection from their parent, from their friend, in deep inside, some kind of more peaceful, more self-confidence. So that experience remains whole life. Those individuals at a young age lacking affection from mother or from their sort of friends, then in deep inside, some kind of sense of insecurity always there. So then in our daily life, meet people, we'll smile, you feel happy. And a smile, we must distinction. The sarcastic smile, sometimes fear. And then diplomatic smile. Also, you see, create some suspicion. So genuine smile, even dogs, I think, have some ability, distinction, genuine smile or artificial smile. I think dogs make distinction. So genuine smile there, I feel happy. Then, at the time of death, the other day I mentioned, you see, you surrounded with golds, diamonds, and bank dollars. At the time of dying, you feel no longer use these things. Even more worry. Now, who will use these monies or these things? So more worry. But at the moment of dying, surrounded with friend who really showing affection, then the dying person feel much happier. So human loving kindness is the beginning of our life, and till our death, that's very important. Now scientists say constant anger, constant stress is actually our immune system. Eating our immune system. So therefore, these are the scientific sort of explanation. Basic human nature is more compassionate. Then furthermore, we are social animal. Any social animal, individual's survival depend on the community. It's very, very clear. Dogs or cats. Cat, I don't know. Some cat you see goes lonely, waiting some bird or some mice. So in any way, generally, I think any social animal, you see, their very survival depend on the rest of the community. So we are social animal. See, individuals' survival or joyfulness, happy life, entirely depend on the community. Firstly, family, then community. Now today's world, I think whole world actually one community. Economically, global economy, no national boundary. Now, on top of that, the global warming. You see, no, how should they making distinction, this continent or that continent, or this nation or that nation. So now time come, we have to think entire 7 billion human beings. And then on the other hand, nobody want problem. Yet, many problems which we are facing, even this very moment, we are peaceful. But, you see, and the few, I think about hundreds of miles, the Kashmir problem there. And then behind there, the Syrian, this problem. And then north, Afghanistan. Same human being, killing each other. And the worst thing, in the name of religion. And this Muslim country, Shia and the Sunni, same Muslim, same Allah, same Quran, 5 times prayer, same, but small differences, Shia and Sunni killing each other. All these are lack of sort of recognition, the other as human brothers, sisters. Religion is personal matter. So when you see, daily, when I look television, and then, how many American here? Oh, okay. Now the Mexican border. Many poor people now waiting there and some dying. Same human brothers, sisters. And basically, a Mexican, not your enemy, but your neighbor. It's much better live peacefully. And this war, I think, creates some uncomfortable feeling. Individuals are mischievous individual, that you can deal accordingly. But basically, I think America, symbol of free world, leading nation of free world. So, when people think about America, I think should get some feeling and hope. America, when people think America, some kind of fear. That's not good. So my number one commitment is believing myself as a human being. And we all, as I mentioned earlier, mentally, emotionally, physically, we are same. So, social animal, we should promote human compassion, irrespective believer or non-believer, and mainly based on scientific sort of finding. That's important. I think out of 7 billion, over 1 billion non-believer. So if we say compassion is important because Jesus Christ say, and Buddha say, then those non-believers say, oh, don't care. But on a scientific basis, if we say, then they pay more attention. So that in this country, 1,000 years, you see, they're describing secular ethics, not based on religion, but through sort of the common sense, use common sense, and sort of educate. Wholeheartedness is important. So that's my number one commitment. Then number two commitment is I'm Buddhist. So the religious tolerance is very essential. All major world religious tradition, in spite of different philosophical sort of view, but all carry same message of love. For example, theistic religion, we all created by God. What kind of God? Full of love, compassion. That's our Father. 7 billion human beings created by that kind of Father. So that very powerful to bring conviction. We must be more compassionate children of God. We should be. If God himself angry one, then we can say God himself, you say, quite angry God. So since he creates us, so anger is normal. But if you truly believe Creator, God, infinite love, and the entire 7 billion human being is actually children of same Father. Very powerful, very good. Then Jainism, Buddhism, and some part of Sankhyaism, no God, no creator, but rather self-creation. Here also, you see, everything depends on your own action. So therefore, in this country, India, concept of ahimsa, non-violence, over 3,000 years. That's the main sort of spiritual message, ahimsa, non-violence. In order to carry non-violence more effectively, karuna, compassion. These two things are over 3,000 years India's tradition. Really wonderful. And then gradually, the Jainism, I think, further expand. And then Buddhism has created a lot of sort of complicated philosophy, but the main message is love, karuna. So as a result, I think, look, India, modern India, the large number of Muslims there, but no problem. And I never heard problem among Indian Muslim, Sunni and Shia. I never heard. So therefore, and then Indian Muslim, very much respect other tradition, live together. India, over 1 billion populated nation, but religious harmony is still there, very much. Over 3,000 years, different religious tradition there, and live together harmoniously, mutual respect, and sometimes mutual learning, like that. So it shows me it is possible, religious harmony. So my number 2 commitment is try to promote religious harmony. Then number 3 commitment, I am Tibetan. I have the name of Dalai Lama. So the reality, 6 million Tibetan, trust me, believe me. So I have a moral responsibility. So now regarding political matter, since 2001, I retired, totally retired. We already have elected political leadership, so they look after. My responsibility regarding Tibet is preservation of Tibetan culture. I really feel, 8th century. I think firstly, 7th century Tibetan 가서디 맞다. 세점 대두기. 세점. I think recently one sort of Chinese ecologist, because archaeologist, someone, the existence of Tibetan human being over 50,000 or something, very early. So then, an early period is, I think, a Tibetan way of life, quite similar that of Mongolian. Sword, spear, and animal. Whenever some, because of the opposition come, crash. So, according to some Chinese history book, you see, they mentioned in 7th century, 8th century, in those sort of period, three, kingdom, Chinese kingdom, Mongol kingdom, Tibetan kingdom. The Chinese, anyway, is more civilized. So you see, they pay more attention about the political matter, these things. Mongol pay more attention about warfare. Then Tibetan sort of kingdom pay more attention about religion. And the someone in Chala initially, c'est peu, look at it. 40,000 Tibetan human beings habitant
40,000 years ago.
40,000 years ago. Quite old. So then, as I mentioned earlier, 7th century, the Tibetan king married with Tang, Tang, what's the princess of Tang dynasty. And I think through that way, first sort of introduce Buddha Dharma in Tibet, 7th century. So sometimes I feel a little bit funny. The 7th century King Songtse Gampo married with Chinese princess. So certainly he enjoyed Chinese food. And also to learn some Chinese cultural heritage. But he found too complicated Chinese letter. So he invented Tibetan script, copy from Indian Devanagari alphabet, Kaka Kanga, Chacha Chanya, like that. So he developed unique Tibetan script. Then 8th century, the Tibetan king, his mother, I think Chinese. So very close link. But then he prefer Buddha Dharma, which he should bring directly from Indian, at that time, Nalanda institution is the main sort of institution of Buddha Dharma. So he invited Shanda Rakshita, great scholar in the logical field, great scholar. He wrote some logical text, logical text of logic. And then philosophy, Madhyamika philosophy. He monk. So he invited. So, Shanda Rakshita, introduced Nalanda tradition it seems not only introduce, but also he give us the responsibility for preservation of that tradition. So then eventually Nalanda ruined. But Nalanda tradition we kept over 1,000 years. So sometimes I jokingly teasing my Indian friend, traditionally Indian, our teacher. Now modern time, it seems we become teacher. Indian, you see, neglect all this knowledge. Not only so prayer, these things, but Nalanda tradition. I think like quantum physics, Nalanda tradition, very much sort of alive. As a student of Nalanda tradition, we know about quantum physics. When I discuss with modern quantum physicists, our knowledge is much better, much deeper. All these from Nalanda tradition we learned. And then psychology. As far as psychology, sometimes maybe too much because of presumptuous. You see, I describe modern psychology. When we discuss with them, it seems modern psychology looks like kindergarten level. Compare ancient Indian psychology. Indian psychology is highly developed. Okay. So these things we kept. And including quantum physics and psychology, when we explain, not based on quotation, but based on reason. Buddha himself, you see, made clear, oh, my follower, bhikshus, scholars, should not accept my teaching out of faith, but rather thorough investigation and experiment. That's very scientific way. So some Chinese Buddhist scholar, they say Buddha Dharma, Buddhism, according to Nalanda tradition, is very scientific religion. It's true. We very much based on reason, not faith. So when we discuss with scientists, it become very useful. Mutual learning. They learn like psychology, emotion, these things. We learn from their finding. How old cosmos, and these things. This is very useful information from scientists. Although some Buddhist texts mentioned about cosmology or these things, but somehow they say world is flat, and sun and moon more or less same size and same level goes around the Mount Meru. Actually, nonsense. So we can say, oh, this is wrong. Sometimes I used to jokingly expressing the text which mentioned these things. The writer of that text, Bosuband, naturally when he writes this text, Abhidhamoko Shakarika, so he naturally, at that time, he a little bit old, so his eye is not very good. So he, when you see cloudy day, he tried to look the size of sun. It seems to him not much differences, size of moon and sun. So in his writing, he mentioned these things. Then Mount Meru, I usually is telling people publicly, I have been several times from here to Europe, Europe to America, America to Japan, or Hawaii, Hawaii to Japan, Japan to India. I never saw Mount Meru. If Mount Meru there, I think millions of people going that way must be someone should see Mount Meru. Nothing. So we can analyze. Things are some script mentioned that, but don't care. Analyze. So that's the way of logical approach. Okay. So this knowledge, I think we Tibetan, now today, whole world, the Nalanda tradition, Nalanda knowledge, available only Tibetan tradition. And also it seems to me very clear, the Tibetan language is the best language to explain psychology, philosophy, and these logic, these things. Because before Buddhism reached Tibet, one Tibetan scholar expressed, before India's light reached Tibet, Tibet, in spite land of snow, white, bright, but in spite that, Tibet dark. After light of India reached Tibet, then Tibet become bright. It's very true, very true. So so then eventually the Shanta Rakshita advise, since you have your own language, so instead of study or learning Sanskrit or Pali, it should now translate into Tibetan. So 8th century, I think, started translation. So at that time, Tibetan language, very primitive. So new Sanskrit word, and they develop new word, Tibetan. So now today, Sanskrit and Tibetan language is most closest, like that. So Sanskrit, now more or less, that language. Some scholars may know something, may use, otherwise, no. So among the living language, Tibetan language is the best language to explain these difficult subjects. So my sort of responsibility is try to preserve this knowledge, including language, like that. And politically, you see, historically, Tibet is a separate country. But world is changing. I very much admire the spirit of European Union. Common interest is more important. Now today's British Prime Minister is a little strange. Now he's really facing some problems now. She's really facing the latest situation.
Parliament won't get it, that's it.
Oh. So European Union, I really feel the French de Gaulle and German Adenauer, during wartime, arch enemy. And historically, French and German is a very much negative attitude. At First World War, Second World War. But then, after Second World War, they realize common interest is more important than individual national interest. So they set up European Union. So I often, expressing the same spirit of European Union, I think eventually should start in Latin America and also in Africa, not whole Africa. Firstly, Northern Africa, then Central Africa, and then Southern Africa, like that. And the Middle East also. I think some kind of common union. this moment, I feel some also unrealistic wishful thinking. As eventually, Saudi Arabia and Iran should create union. Otherwise, silly. One follower of Shia, one follower of Sunni. I think, to me, the Iran, no matter how bad, but still, democratic country, elected. Saudi Arabia, not like that. I think Saudi Arabia seems to say no proper rule of law, isn't it? Everything in one family, king, like that. So in any way, I really admire European Union. Therefore, we, since early the 50s and 60s, we raised Tibetan issue at the UN. And then one occasion, Pandit Nehru advised me. Of course, I have very close sort of contact Pandit Nehru. I seek his advice, and he also advised me like that. So then once he told me, America will not go to war with China in order to liberate Tibet. It's true. It's very realistic. So then Pandit Nehru told me, sooner or later, you have to deal with Chinese government. No use raising Tibet issue at the UN. And so, 1974, we decided not now also try to raise Tibetan issue at the UN. We wait, and then we not sort of thinking independence of Tibet. So, 74, we decided. Then, 78, Deng Xiaoping indicate he want meet one my representative. So we developed direct contact with Deng Xiaoping. And then Deng Xiaoping made very clear, except independence, anything can be discussed. So now we simply trying to seek the Chinese constitution, mentioned certain right, and also area, the constitution recognized Tibetan area, Tibetan autonomous region, Tibetan district, autonomous prefecture,
County.
Autonomous county. So Chinese constitution recognized as a Tibetan area. Then this area should have equal right to preserve their own culture, their own language. Then, practically also, a Tibetan, wants more material development. Sometimes I jokingly teasing Tibetan, quite big number of Tibetan illegally immigrated to Europe, mainly France or Belgium, and then Canada, and then America. So these people are not seeking spirituality, but seeking dollar. So Tibetan, wants or loves dollar, money. So remain within the People's Republic of China. It is our interest. The China now economically, because of the highly developed. So already, in Tibet, there are a lot of sort of development, road, airport, and buildings like that. So that's our benefit. And then China, today, number of Buddhists there. So we can share our knowledge with them. So there's mutual benefit. In modern time, the real meaning of independence is not much meaning. Better live together as a union, part of a union. And I like the Chinese word, 中华人民共和国, or union. Like India, East India, South India, West India, Central India, different language, different script, but all live in the union. That's wise. One occasion in East India, Manipur. Once I have been there, some reporter asked me their independence. Then I told them, you should think more more holistic way. And then the Manipur, small country, independence, not much meaning. Much better remain Union of India. So like that, we historically different, but we are very much committed, willing, remain within the People's Republic of China, provided they should respect Tibetan culture, like that. So then, and the political matter, as I mentioned earlier, I totally retired. Then my main concern is preservation of Tibetan culture, including Tibetan language, and then environment. One my Chinese friend, ecologist, he told me, according to his sort of observation, the effect for global warming from Tibetan Plateau is as much as South Pole and the North Pole. So he described Tibet Plateau as third pole. So the Tibetan environment, something very important. So then, recently, Chinese Prime Minister, Li Keqiang Samarwe, he visited Tibet, and he also expressed the preservation of ecology. Wonderful, wonderful. And many years ago, the Dharamsala, as Prime Minister, at that time, you see, there a lot of flood from Tibet. So he gives some instruction. The area, this river, Mekong River, and Yellow River, Yangtze River, you see, the forest must keep, should not deforest. So ecological, it is something very important, not only Tibetan themselves, but also to almost whole Asia. China, Yangtze River, in Dichukasa.
Yellow
River.
Yellow.
Machu. Yellow River, and Kare in Chuti. Dichukasa. Yangtze River, which Vietnam Drat. Mekong River. And then India, Brahmaputra. And then Ganges River. And Pakistan side, Indus River. So all these major rivers come from Tibetan, also the mountains, Tibetan area. So sometimes I jokingly telling my Indian friend, we are supplier of water to India. If something goes wrong, ecological problem, then billions of Indians then really facing difficult no water. So the global warming is quite serious. I really wondering, these young children, when they reach their age 60, 70, what kind of world? Global warming, something very serious. I noticed last 60 years, this very place, 1960, I came here. 59, came to India, 1 year at Mussoorie, then 60 summer, I came here. That winter, lot of snow. Then each year, snow less. So over 60 years, some change. Now this winter seems more snow, fortunately. But so within last few decades, you see the weather change significantly, you see, happen. When I was passing through Afghanistan, there are many signs of dry lakes. Gradually, now Tibet also become like desert without water, possible. So global warming is something very, very important. But our American president don't care about global warming, isn't it? It is quite sad. He withdrew from Gaza. Paris Climate Treaty. Oh. Yes. Now some questions. Question answer. Yes, first you.
How does it feel like to be reincarnated? How does it feel like to be reincarnated?
Gaza. Reincarnated. Nothing. The name of Dalai Lama or reincarnated is just people create, people's creation. Myself, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a human being. And I may say I'm quite a normal human being.
Your Holiness, I've been contemplating the concept of emptiness, and I was hoping if you could please share some insight to how we can relate to emptiness in a modern context.
That's the key thing as far as Buddhism is concerned, and particularly Nalanda tradition. In Nalanda tradition, the Longsu Posa, the Chinese language, Longsu Posa, and Nagarjuna, he also thoroughly explained about Buddha's teaching of emptiness. So now emptiness, not as nothingness, but like quantum physics, you see, quantum physics say not nothingness, but things does not exist as appears. Appearance is something exists there. But if we investigate nothing, so things does not exist as appears. There is a big gap, appearances and reality. Now, the emptiness telling what's the ultimate reality, and nothing. If we, because of the physical, because of the parts,
Dissect.
Now,
If we take something and dissect it,
nothing. And the quantum physics not yet reached about mind. That's they call observer. Now, in Buddhist tradition, they also investigate what's mind. Mind, not physical, but
Yes. The mind is posited in terms of continuity of streams.
So, mind, so-called mind, is the something jit shigo chachen mind. Di chache damang zurda.
Yes. So when we talk about mind, it's not just a single entity; it's a continuation of moments. So we can talk about a whole mind, which is made up
So
of these
when we talk
moments.
continuation, they automatically involve past, present, future. Then present is the basis of past and future. Now present, if we further go, present century, present decade, present year, present month, present week and day and hour and minute, second. No present. Second, 1 second past, 1 second future. Where is present? No present. Then without present, very difficult to say past and future. So that's just on the roughly appearances we say continuation of mind. But if you go detail, nothing. So now the Madhyamika philosophy, Nagarjuna says, if we investigate, if we analyze, nothing independently exists, but just a mere designation. That, you see, concept to Buddhists try to defeat our emotion which believe things are independently exist there. That basis of exaggeration. One of my American psychologist, great psychologist, his age now, when my last meeting a few years ago, his age already 110 or something.
Aaron Beck.
Aaron Beck. You see, few decades, he dealt with people whose mind too much disturbed by anger. So he told me, those angry people, when they feel anger, the object which they feel angry appears something very negative. But reality, 90% of that negativeness is mental projection. This is exactly now Madhyamika philosophy would say. So now antidote is to analyze things does not exist as appears. Ultimately, your own designation. So the anger, attachment come. Things appears something absolute, and good and bad also absolute. Recently, I heard one Chinese student who studied quantum physics. He, you see, expressed when he think about nothing exists objectively. That affect his sort of the extreme view, good or bad. That's exactly, you see, the purpose of Nalanda, this Madhyamika philosophy. I also practice that daily. So, very, very helpful. One part of practice is altruism. One part of practice is nothing exists as appears. So Nagarjuna explained interdependent. interconnected. Nothing exists independently. Everything depends on other factor. So that also, you see, the approach, more realistic approach, things. It exists, but exists due to many other factors, including your own mind. So then our anger, attachment, these happen. Its very nature is entirely, is also believe things exist there independently. Then attachment, anger comes. For example, usually we develop anger towards our enemy, so-called enemy. But then you're angry towards the enemy's physical or enemy's mind. Then the anger feels confused, isn't it? Oh, like that. And similarly, when we feel I, where is I? Not just physical. I can say my physical, my mind. So still there is I. Where is I? I here? No. Here? No. Difficult. I is there. But if you investigate, we cannot find. So finally, combination of physical and mind is just merely designated as I, self. But in Indian tradition, Atma, then there is independent I is there. And the journalism, Western culture, soul, also more or less independent self. The Buddhist anatma theory, no atma. But when I explain about rebirth, I found very useful the concept of atma. Recently, well, I think 2 years ago, in South India, I have sort of, what's the useful discussion with one Indian Hindu sadhu, good scholar, and very good. He's serving people, particularly student. Wonderful. So he invited me. I went there, and then I told him, practice of kasa,
Shila, morality.
No, practice of morality, and practice of single-pointed mind, and practice of the analytical meditation. Generally, same. Hindu, Buddhist, same. So we are truly spiritual brothers. And then differences, the Hindu believe soul, Buddhist no believe soul. So that our private business. You believe, soul. I do not believe soul. So that's our private business. So similarly, believe creator, God or not, private business. We both human beings, we should pay more attention about love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, self-discipline. Next question.
Your Holiness, thank you very much for your powerful words today and funky glasses. I like them. I like your glasses.
벌써? 글쎄. I see. then without glass.
It's even more so.
Yes.
I'd like to ask you about compassion. You spoke of all of us having a compassionate soul. But many times it feels like there are acts of lack of compassion and that compassion is blocked between many individuals, countries, situations. How do we unblock compassion?
Now that's a very important question. As I mentioned earlier, basic human nature more compassionate. Like these young children, they don't care about, say, different religious tradition or different nationality. So long, play together. One time, I visited Switzerland, Pestalozzi. Some Palestinian children, Jewish children, play together, nothing. So at a young age, like that, they don't care. What is the differences? Gradually, when we join our education, our school, then you see, not much talking about our inner, deeper human value. Simply, you see, talking about money, about materialistic life. Now, that's, I feel, existing modern education system is not complete. It's very much oriented about material value. So now, modern education, as I briefly mentioned, should include about education inner value, so that children at a young age are basic human value very much alive. They need that. Now, once join education, the further sort of explanation, the warm-heartedness is very important for your health, for your happy family, for your happy community. These should teach, should include. And then furthermore, the Indian psychology, as I mentioned earlier. You see, there in the West, when we say consciousness, they only sensorial level. Not much talking about chit or mind. So training of mind is chit, not eye consciousness, ear consciousness. The five senses of consciousness, because of the active, the mental consciousness, they are. Then in dream time, sensorial consciousness no longer, mental consciousness there. Then deep sleep without dream, even further deeper consciousness. So sometimes it can be possible in dream time, thinking some spiritual practice is more effective because the sensorial consciousness no longer active. Like that. So I think it is important to make distinction, different level of consciousness. And the trouble, anger, attachment, jealousy, these come because of the mainstream of consciousness, not sensorial. Like that. I think two persons, one person seeing someone very dear, and one person see that very negative. But eye consciousness same. Mentally, one is considered negative, one considered positive. So training of mind is mental level, not consciousness. So it is very important to make distinction, different level of consciousness, mind. Since these troublemaker, anger, hatred, these related with main consciousness. So method also must develop in main consciousness, not sensorial. Okay. Next.
We'll do one more. Anyone in the back?
Hi, Your Holiness. So I have a question. As you mentioned, we are all the same. And I believe that a question that we've been struggling all our lives is a sense of self-identity, even though we say that we are brothers and sisters. But as you mentioned earlier on as well, we see things differently. We have different filters. So how do we recognize and fine-tune?
should. They should. 굽자 속시. 또 고스톱도 안 맞아. 가, 是吧？是吧？
Yeah. So how do we recognize and fine-tune the filter that we've been using to reflect a true self or identity? Because there's been so many labels that we face since growing up. So how do we find that true voice?
그래서 as I mentioned earlier, see, we are social animal. Each individual's future or happiness depend on community. Now today's reality is Eastern world, their future depend on West. Western world's future depend East. Similarly, South, North, like that. So, and then I think we too much emphasis different nationality, different races. And India, I think caste system is really outdated. So in any way, you see too much emphasis, differences. It's a source of problem. No gain. Think about oneness of human being, oneness of whole world. That is the realistic, and as I mentioned earlier, the European Union, the thinking, oneness of European. They are not sort of emphasis, French, Germany. One of my friend, the von Weizsäcker, great scientist, physicist, quantum physicist, he told me when he was young, every German eye, French is their enemy. Similarly, French eye, Germany is their enemy. When we sort of, then you see, 1990s, he told me, nowadays, that kind of sort of perception, no longer. German, French, just our neighbor. So like that, too much emphasis with German, French, killing. What benefit? It's a oneness of European, much benefit. So further extent, oneness of human being. It is possible. It is very good. Now today's reality, we really need the sense of oneness of human being. Since a lot of problem, including killing, is on the basis of differences, different nationality, different religion, cause problem. So the only remedy is go deeper way, we are same human being. So that's the only way. If we think deeper level, we are same human being, they want happiness, I want happiness, my future depends on them, then killing is no longer relevant. It's much better, live together. So I think those American companies which produce weapons, I think eventually should close.
Last question is,
yes.
When can we come back?
What's up?
Yeah.
Go on.
Gene, you're going to say thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. Next week?
Oh.
My wife would like to say thank you.
Okay.
Your Holiness, thank you so much. We are so grateful. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Seek and you shall find." And we have come, we are seekers, and we have come and sought your wisdom. And hopefully with your wisdom, we will want to plant seeds so that we will grow good fruits of peace and love. So thank you for being part of
Thank
our
you.
journey and our life journey.
Thank you. I very much encouraged, you see, people from different country, different culture, different language, but come here as a human being and thinking more deeper level of our value. That's hopeful sign, hopeful sign. So now sometimes I feel my age, now 84, so not many years now, perhaps another 10 years, then 94, then too old. But it seems my mind still, I think, okay. The 94-year-old wheelchair mind, quite clear. And then I can talk. So, but anyway, in any way, you see, now my life now ending. So, so long. So I alive, and according to my own experience, some of these thoughts, you see more and more people showing interest and implement and further think. That's the purpose of my life. My daily prayer, my physical, my speech, my mind, dedicated well-being of others. And furthermore, I'm monk, no family, so quite good. Otherwise, you see, my children, grandchildren, their marriage, a lot of problems. So some occasion, I told some Western who become Buddhist monk, I told them, you see, when you feel a little bit lonely, you should look those family who have a lot of problems. And I have, you see, some of my friend. When my first visit to America, one wife and few children. Then after a few years, another visit, another wife. Then another occasion, third wife. That also is a source of a problem, isn't it? And especially those children. So I told these people, this is sort of source of our encouragement, simple Buddhist monk. Thank you.